the fact that the Philippine Navy will indeed face a shortage of major naval assets in 2019 to 2020. Despite the arrival of the Pohang-class corvette next year, it was concluded that the Philippine Navy would indeed face a shortage of major naval assets in 2019 to 2020. Thus, several proposals were submitted on how to deal with ship shortages. Among those proposed were the acquisition of used platforms using emergency funds, grants, military assistance, or special support from the government. But isn't Pres. Duterte's policy not to buy used military equipment? Although this is a presidential policy, it seems the AFP also did not follow it. It should be noted that the Philippine Air Force is scheduled to acquire 2 renewed heavy tactical transport planes from the US C-130 Hercules, while also paying for 2 OV-10G Combat Dragons and 2 OV-10A Bronco, all renewed attacks and also from the US. Meanwhile, the Philippine Army is also in the process of acquiring second-hand M113A2 armored vessels, which will become the foundation for their upcoming mortar carrier acquisition project. So what's the difference for the Philippine Navy to get used equipment if it's the only solution for the Navy that requires additional assets urgently but lacks sufficient funds? 1. Additional Hamilton-class cutters from U.S. Coast Guard. The most anticipated proposal is to acquire an additional Hamilton-class cutter from the U.S. Coast Guard. Given that the Philippine Navy already has sufficient experience with this type, and will have no difficulty accepting other units of this class of ships. At present there are still three Hamilton-class cutters operating with the U.S. Coast Guard and are expected to retire soon after their replacement is available. These are USCGC Mellon, WHEC 717, USCGC Monroe, WHEC 724, and USCGC Midget, WHEC 726. But are they available for transfer to any country? According to CMDR, the Chuck Hill blog discusses about Hamilton-class ships. USCG can USCGC Midget pensions in 2019, USCGC Mellon in 2020, and USCGC Monroe in 2021. These are taken from the annual report of the Ship Disposal Office posted in 2016. Based on the information above, this seems to be possible if the Philippine Navy and the Department of National Defense (DND) submit a request to the Pentagon, and are approved by the U.S. government. Each proposal for an additional Hamilton-class vessel must be supported by JUSMAG Philippines, which according to Max Defense will not be a problem. It will also be noted that many other countries including Vietnam, Sri Lanka and Nigeria may compete with the Philippines for these vessels, given that Sri Lanka has just received 1 ship, while Vietnam also has 1 with the Coast Guard and may request additional units as well. 2. Request for Addtional Pohang-class corvette. Max Defense previously posted several times in its Facebook page and in some of its blog entries that the Philippine Navy is interested in acquiring more Pohang-class corvettes. In addition to the one already donated and is being refitted in South Korea at the moment, ROKS Cheongju. Philippine Navy Force Matrix reports in the past show that to become relevant and meaningful, the fleet should have at least 3 ships of the same class. And this also applies to the Pohang-class corvette. Having 1 ship of the class would make it irrelevant in terms of maintenance, logistics and support. The good news is, apparently the Philippine Navy already requested for a second Pohang-class corvette with the South Korean Defense Ministry. And current proposals by the Navy's top officials are for the Philippine Navy through the DND to request a 3rd unit as well. It should be noted that among the discussions made by the South Korean and Philippine Defense Ministries in the previous SKPH Defense Joint Committee meeting a few months ago is for South Korea to donate another Pohang-class corvette to the Philippines in return for the acquisition of the Kaiku-1 Syrian utility helicopter by the Philippine Air Force. But recent turn of events may not point to this anymore, as the PA have selected America's Sikorsky S-70I Black Hawk instead. It is still unclear if the South Korean Defense Ministry approved the requested second Pohang-class Corvette, which will be a gauge if a future request for a third ship is possible. But Max Defense has concerns regarding this. It should be noted that the donation of the first Pohang-class Corvette suffered tremendous delays due to red tape and funding difficulty with the Philippine side, resulting to negative feedback from the South Korean side. The Koreans may not be very keen in providing another Corvette if the Philippine side will not take immediate action to provide funding and start the refurbishing and training activities like what happened with the ROK's Chungju. Non-approval of the second unit request will speak a lot on how the South Korean side view the Philippine side's seriousness, considering they can't even hasten the allocation and release of a measly amount for a donated warship. 3. Interest in the Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates from the U.S. or Adelaide-class from Australia. Another offer that was made years ago and was reconfirmed recently is from the U.S. government for the Philippines to accept some of their retired Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates that are currently mothballed and awaiting its fate in the U.S. mainland. Apparently the offer is for at least 3 ships to be given for free to the Philippines, but the Philippines will be paying for the reactivation and rehabilitation of these ships, which could cost around $60 minus $100 million per ship depending on the ship's condition and the systems to be fitted in, or probably more if the PN includes several more subsystems with it. Based on Max Defense's information, the U.S. might also be willing to shoulder part of the expenses and to be billed on the annual military assistance program of the U.S. to the Philippines. Max Defense previously mentioned that the offer was made as late as when U.S. Defense Sec. James Mattis and 2 other U.S. cabinet officials wrote to Pres. Duterte regarding the U.S. offer to sell arms to the Philippines. While the focus of Pres. Duterte's announcement about the offer was on the fighter aircraft and attack helicopter angles. The frigates were also among those in the list. Advance information about the offer was made as early as during the Rim of the Pacific exercises in Hawaii, several months ago. In addition to the American offer, it was also noted that the Philippine Navy took some interest in the Adelaide-class frigates of the Royal Australian Navy, which are essentially Australian-operated Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates with better weapons and sensor fit, and probably less beaten up than their American counterparts. HMAS Melbourne, FFG-05, and HMAS Newcastle, FFG-06, are still in service and could be retired and offered for sale very soon. But since they are quite new, only commissioned in 1992, they might be only available for sale by 2022 and beyond. Another hull, HMAS Darwin, FFG-04, was already stripped and won't be possibly for sale to other navies anymore. The problem with this offer is that the Philippine Navy is allergic to ships that do not use diesel engines as its main propulsion. Both the Oliver Hazard Perry-class and the Adelaide-class uses an all-gas turbine propulsion, which is something the Philippine Navy is trying to avoid. The PM believes that should they take the offer, the ships would end up as port queens as they would not be able to afford to operate them as often as they wanted. And while the cost of ships are pretty acceptable, the lengthy preparation for the ships means that they can probably be delivered only after 2 years from signing the agreement, which won't really help the PN address its ship shortage issues at the earliest possible time. But their arrival would be beneficial in the medium to long-term plans of the Philippine Navy to improve its capabilities, especially in anti-submarine warfare, which are the ship's greatest asset. 4. Returning interest on the Maestrale-class frigate of the Italian Navy. This might be surprising to many, but Max Defense has sufficient information that confirms the return of interest of the Philippine Navy with the Maestrale-class frigates of the Italian Navy. It would be remembered that prior to the decision to acquire new frigates, the original proposal was for the Philippine Navy to acquire at least 2 of the Maestrale-class frigates after their retirement from Italian Navy service. but it was later decided to go for new frigates after shipbuilders submitted their proposals to the Philippine Navy, and the Philippine Navy backed out of their almost complete deal with the Italians, which made relations sour. It would be noted that the Italian Navy has retired 3 of their 8 Maestrale-class frigates, the lead ship Maestrale F-570, Alisio F-574, and Euro F-575. Apparently all 3 are still intact and are to be sold off to other countries. Another one, the Aspero F-576, was already released from active duty last the 31st of December 2018, and is expected to be formally retired in 2019 and may have the same fate. Max Defense recently posted on the Italian Ministry of Defense's confirmation that the Alisio will indeed be for sale. The Maestrale-class are actually the best used frigates that the Philippine Navy can acquire. It uses a combined diesel or gas (CODOG) propulsion, are newer, more modern, and better equipped than the Hamilton-class, and are cheaper to sustain than the Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates. Currently many of its subsystems are obsolete and may need replacement soon. This is where the Philippines is expected to spend a lot if they decide to acquire one or some of the Maestrale-class frigates. Previous assessments made by the Philippine Navy inspection team also noted this 6 years ago, so definitely the same assessment could be raised again. But the Philippine Navy may opt to continue using these ships' current subsystems as long as they work. If the Italians are able to work with it for the next 3 years, the Italian Navy plans to retire the last of the class by 2023, then definitely the Philippines can do the same. Upgrades for the subsystems can be done once the Philippine Navy receive their new frigates, corvettes and offshore patrol vessels. Anyway, the Philippine Navy can't do anything either since budget for any upgrades aren't expected to be available soon. The main issue will be the having to convince the Italians that the Philippine Navy is serious should it enter into a deeper understanding with the Italians in acquiring the ship. It should be remembered that, short of a contract, the deal was already considered a done deal by the Italians, and the Filipinos backing out was outrageous for the Italians. The Italians may have lost trust of Filipinos especially in this deal, and they might not take Filipino interest in the ships very seriously. And with this, the Philippine Navy may just need to work extra harder to even just make the Italians listen. Another issue is the purchase price. Would the Italians play hard to get again with these frigates and price them unreasonably high for its age and condition? Or will they be more considerate this time since the ships have aged almost 6 years more since the time the PN has been talking to them about these ships? And also considering the previous acquisition of Italian-made products like the helicopters from Augusta Westland, Leonardo by both the PN and PAF in the past few years. There is already an impending plan by the PN to visit the ships in Italy for inspection within the next month or two. 6. For the Philippine Coast Guard to step up further to cover the PN's deficiencies. Another proposal raised by the Philippine Navy is for the Philippine Coast Guard (PCG) to stand up and cover the deficiencies of the Philippine Navy. Considering they are modernizing their fleet as well, even faster than the Philippine Navy. The PCG is expected to receive a brand new 84-meter offshore patrol vessel from OCEA of France by August 2019, which is to be named BRP Gabriela Silang, which could be used by the PCG for long-range patrols in place of the BRP Gregorio del Pilar. It would also be noted that the PCG has shown interest in ordering a second 84-meter OPV from OCEA, while also has an impending project to build 2 new 90-plus meter long offshore patrol vessels from Japan. Both these would only be probably available for service by 2021-2022. It would be difficult for the PCG to step up that quickly considering most of the modernization projects underway with the PCG only involve small boats mostly less than 18 meters in length, and are only applicable for intercoastal operations. Max Defense will discuss one important modernization project of the PCG in a future blog. 7. To delay the implementation of the Pilar-class frigate upgrade project. There were also some who prefer to delay the implementation of the Pilar-class frigate upgrade project until more ships become available. This means that the PN would only focus on repairing the damaged BRP Gregorio del Pilar and put her out to sea as fast as possible, while all other ships of the class will continue as they were. This actually doesn't solve the dilemma that the PN has over the BRP Gregorio del Pilar for the year 2019, considering she will be out of service whether they do the upgrade or not. This also means that the potential cost of upgrading the old frigates will go up, and the budget allocated now won't be enough once they start with the project in 2020. While also making the budget allocation get expired since the current funding rules only allow the allocation to be available within 12 calendar months. Should the fund expire, the Philippine Navy will have no choice but to request for funding again from the DND, which in turn will submit the request to the DN. Max Defense believes that this is not a smart proposal at all.